गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन। आज हमारे साथ हैं मेजर राकेश शर्मा शौर्य चक्र सर। एसएस शॉर्ट सर्विस कोर्स से हैं और सर ने मीडियम आरटी में भारतीय सेना के अंदर काम किया। सर अदरवाइज कारगिल के टाइम से ही एक्शन देखते रहे और लोलाब वैली में सीआई ऑपरेशंस करते हुए सर को शौर्य चक्र मिला फॉर काउंटर इंसर्जेंसी ऑपरेशंस। सर ने फौज छोड़ने के बाद से कॉर्पोरेट में भी काम किया, सोशल एंटरप्राइज भी किया और अब सर ने एक और ऑफिसर के साथ मिल करके टाइगर एस्टेट के नाम से ऋषिकेश के पास मोहन चट्टीगर के एक जगह वहां पर एक बहुत ही सुंदर रिजॉर्ट बनाया नेक्स्ट टू द ह्यूल रिवर। So today we'll be having a discussion with Rakesh sir in terms of his entrepreneurial journey and the advice he can give to would-be entrepreneurs, officers who want to be entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry. So welcome to the talk today evening, Rakesh sir.
Thank you so much, Vipul, and it's a great pleasure being on your platform on the Value Talks. And it will be an earnest and honest effort. Then next about power during the course of interaction, I would like to give the most positive and useful insights onto this sector and whatever other queries the esteemed audience would have on this aspect or any other aspect. Thank you so much.
तो सबसे पहले मैं सर को एक बार उनसे सवाल जवाब पूछूं उनको, उससे पहले मैं सर के रिजॉर्ट के कुछ फोटोग्राफ्स आप लोगों को दिखाता हूं so that you have an idea as to what we are discussing here. These are some of the pictures. This is one of the picture of his resort, Tiger Estate. आप देख सकते हैं राइट साइड में there is a green hall accommodation and then you have green area in front. This is the internal of the accommodation. इस तरह के वहाँ पर rooms हैं. This is the furnishing. बाकी आप और पिक्चर्स वगैरह इनके वेबसाइट से देख सकते हैं. Their website is quite easily accessible. All you need to do is type in Tiger Estate Rishikesh or their website along with map etc. सब कुछ आ जाता है. तो सर मेरा आपसे पहला सवाल आज के बात को शुरू करते हुए, आपका हॉस्पिटैलिटी इंडस्ट्री को लेकर के क्या असेसमेंट है आने वाले टाइम में? टूरिज्म एज अ इंडस्ट्री इन इंडिया, वेयर डू यू थिंक दिस इंडस्ट्री इज गोइंग टू बी इन इंडिया सर?
Vipul, there's a term which was used for certain industries earlier, which were termed as sunrise industries. And when it comes to hospitality and tourism, I would still rate it as a sunrise industry in India. And I'll place certain figure and facts and certain other, statements or logics as to why it is a sunrise industry even today in India. According to certain estimates, till 2028, 30.5 billion of international tourist inflow is expected in our country, which is expected to generate a $50 billion revenue in the hospitality sector solely from the international coming in. The other important aspect is that if one notice, even today, 86% of our population is not able to afford to move out for a vacation. And these are the figures which are quoted from various sources, from the known sources. 75% of our population doesn't come to eat out in India today. And when you have that kind of potential where 85% of the population can't afford any vacation, then the potential to grow and to rise in this industry is huge. It's humongous. The third aspect is that in last few years I have experienced it myself that India being a country of youth, lot of in terms of the solo travelers, the backpackers, you name it, there are various terminologies used in the hospitality sector. They have taken in a large way to travel and tourism, and this number is definitely to go very, very high in times to come because it is just started in last few years. So it's bound to happen, it's bound to grow, there's no doubt about it. The fact is that today also, the other parameter which I would like to throw out very clearly is that 65% of our population in 2011 census, we were 75% rural. In 2022-23, we are 65% rural. So we know that rural India, how much people are able to afford or rather even think about vacationing, going out, taking their family households out and going At the best, they go for some religious places, some religious tourism kind of a thing. They don't really go for vacations. So when you have these kind of numbers and you have these kind of figures in front of you, the one can only imagine that sky is also not the limit. One can grow in this sector as much as possible. I mean, the potential is huge, humongous.
तो ये कहना एग्जैक्जरेशन नहीं होगा सर कि अगर कोई ऑफिसर अभी अपने लिए हॉस्पिटैलिटी एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप का करियर देखता है आफ्टर सीकिंग पीएमआर, so the opportunity is quite promising.
Absolutely, it's as good as if you give it a very logical shape. And what is happening in the country also. So why India is growing at the rate of 6.5 to 7%? Why countries like Japan, US, or even the other countries in Europe, why they are not surging with 5%, 6%? Why? Because the potential exists. So the simple logic in the Fauji mind which says is that wherever the potential is there, the hope is there, the potential to grow is exists. Now it is up to us as a country, as a society, or as industry, that how do we really take benefit out of that and how do we surge at.
सर ये तो आपने बताया एज अ ब्रॉड मैक्रो पिक्चर इन टर्म्स ऑफ द इकोनॉमी, क्या संभावनाएं हैं, क्या पॉसिबिलिटीज है. प्लीज ऑल्सो शेयर योर एंटरप्रेन्योरियल जर्नी विद रेफरेंस टू टाइगर एस्टेट. कैसे आपके दिमाग में आया, कैसे आपने लोकेशन स्काउट किया, कब, I mean, if you could, kind of elaborate that step by step, that would be helpful for people who want to be in the same.
Absolutely, absolutely.
अगर आप
Vipul,
अपनी competition को train कर दें तो थोड़ा सा.
Sorry, what did you said in the last? I couldn't hear.
I'm saying sir, जो आपसे compete करना चाहते हैं उनको ही थोड़ा guide कर दें तो
Why not? Competition is always very healthy, and positive competition is always welcome. See, I'll tell you that when it comes to, you had pointed out one thing that, what about the people, the fraternity who's coming out of the forces from the uniform, and how suitable is this particular domain for them? So I would put it very straight that, somebody who's keen and somebody who has the passion, this is a straight walkthrough. Because one of the important aspects of the hospitality industry, which actually the industry has picked up from forces, are the etiquettes and manners. When we get trained in the academy, when we go for our meals, or so we have a defined way of doing it in the forces. Those aspects I personally saw, same things have been picked up by the industry, got commercialized, so thereafter they have grown and they have taken it by leap and bounds. But otherwise, that is the basic. So for a Fauji coming out of the uniform, I won't be very surprised to see that you have done 50% of this paid work is already been done by you being in the forces. That's one point. The second point is that as far as I am concerned, I personally relate fitness and the spiritualism. Now, as Faujis, we all know, there's no point stressing the factor that we always try in terms of mental and physical fitness, that we would be one of the best lots, and we continue to do that. So my idea was that when I get into tourism, so first focus would be adventure tourism. Second focus would be, the team bond activities and the outbound activities for the youth. And after, I was also contemplating about spiritualism, yoga, and all that. But the first focus point was, of course, adventure tourism. So that inclined me to, start that was the germination point of the entire thing. And thereafter, at a particular point of time, I started looking for some place, location. Then after the location, I started looking for some land where I can really, develop some kind of setup. And this entire process took about 2 to 3 years. And thereafter, of course, with the constant efforts and by the grace of God, I could reach at this location. And thereafter, then the real story started of moving on to a particular piece of land. Thereafter, the entire compliances, then the entire lot of how to go about purchasing the land, the entire history of thereafter the basic infrastructure development, and then developing the project. So that is the process which has gone through into this.
तो सर आपने जो ये प्रेजेंट वाला लोकेशन है, इसको अपने पर्सनल प्रेफरेंस टुवर्ड्स फिटनेस एंड स्पिरिचुअलिटी के हिसाब से ऋषिकेश के आसपास ढूंढा एंड those kind of things
That
guided
is
you in terms of.
yes. So that is one of the major factors. The second factor was that I realized one thing that long travels from the developed side of the country actually takes a toll on the market or the segment, the tourist segment. So I was looking for a location which would be from the major centers in North India at least, which would be few hours of drive and people could reach, accessibility could be faster and easier. So that was the second factor which was there. So there were three factors like that.
सर लास्ट वाली बात आपकी थोड़ी इंटरप्ट हो गई बट एनीवेज मूविंग ऑन सर, मुझे ये बताइए आपके वाला जो सेटअप है, आई थिंक योर रिजॉर्ट इज अराउंड 24 रूम्स.
Yes, 20 to be precise.
ओके सर, 20 रूम प्लस. सो इस तरह का एक मीडियम स्केल सेटअप करने के लिए किस तरह का बेसिक कैपिटल कॉस्टर को चाहिए होगा?
This is a very, very broad question, Vipul, and to answer it very, very straight would be difficult because what happens is that first of all, anything related to infrastructure is bound to be capital intensive. So that is something which is the thumb rule. Number one. Number two, it will now depend on various factors. What is the suitability of the land? What are the ongoing prices there? And then, of course, your negotiation skills. After, I will try to be as loud as possible. So I would, segregate or I will proportionally divide the cost factor into three major aspects. The first is the land aspect. So generally, land would be around 50% of your cost. Then thereafter, there would be factors like compliances, registration, land related documentation and the land development. That would be around 35% of your entire cost. So let's say we are doing 100 rupees of estimation, 50 rupees will go to your land, 35 rupees will go to your compliances and development of land, and balance 15% would go, 15-20% would go to your furnishing of the facility which you created. So this is how generally it will play. Now,
Okay, and like
it will
your
obviously it will
size
vary.
of a property, this कितना size कितना है सर, land
Hello.
size कितना होगा आपकी जैसी property का?
This land is around 4,000 square yards.
So 1 एकड़ के आसपास मतलब approximately. तो सर 4,000 स्क्वायर यार्ड में तो फिर आपने काफी ओपन एरिया भी
That
छोड़
way.
रखा हो.
So I have got a lawn size of around 10,000 square feet, and recently I have added about 1,000 feet of swimming pool to the facility.
तो सर मैं आपसे अगला ये पूछना चाहूंगा कि ठीक है, आपने इतना पैसा लगाया, 4,000 स्क्वायर यार्ड का प्रोजेक्ट डेवलप किया, 20 रूम्स बनाए, पूल और ये सब है. मेजर बिजनेस कैसे आता है? हाउ डू यू गेट द फ्लो ऑफ टूरिस्ट टू योरसेल्फ?
There is an estimation of broad tourist inflow into a particular area. So that is one. Second thing is that what happens is that most of the time, if you see, I've started this facility, is that hospitality and tourism is basically word of mouth. So this is one factor which outweighs all these factors, and this is something which is going to really decide your footfall into your facility and of course your entire revenue generation factor. And I have had many such examples where people who've gone from here and thereafter they have added to my customer base, and it has been happening like this since day one. So that is something which is my experience. Others would differ or may have different experiences, but I'm telling what I have been experiencing here. So my 70% of my customer here is through the references and through the word of.
So references कैसे develop होते हैं sir? How do you network? How do you generate those references, sir?
See, what happens is that of course it's all about your network. How do you grow your network? And secondly, what happens is that about giving good service. So if you give good service and if you are really understanding the pulse of your client, the pulse of your customer, so thereafter the word will spread, the people will talk, the people would give, recommend your brand, people will recommend your place, and people will thereafter talk about it. More they talk about it, more references is generated, more network is grown. So I don't think that's something which is very complex. Only thing is that you need to ensure that you give a good customer service. Now, customer service itself is a very, very broad term, and one can talk about in the, especially in the hospitality sector, you can talk about customer service and customer relations for hours altogether. But in nutshell, the important aspect is that what is the pulse and feel of your customer? Have you been able to gather it or not? Once you've done it, the word will flow. It's like the river water flowing down the channel and finding its way. So it's simply like that.
So mainstay is developing a network and customer service so that आपका word of mouth improve होता रहे सर, जिसकी वजह से ज़्यादा clients property तक आते हैं
बिल्कुल
और
बिल्कुल
I mean recommendation and referrals go up.
yes. See, I'll tell you, like this word of mouth or references or the network. This is important in all industries. There's no doubt about it. But it is much more important in the hospitality sector. It is something like like you come here and thereafter your experience is good. You'll obviously go and recommend it to others, and you'll talk, okay, but theek hai, I have been to Tiger State. I have stayed there. I have experienced it. So anybody going for a family vacation or otherwise also, I would recommend Tiger State, and that's how it continue adding like that.
सर आपका कोई एक ऐसे एक्सपीरियंस शेयर कीजिए with reference to customer service where you had a very difficult customer and you handled it and then turned around, जो मतलब रिटेन भी हुआ और रेफरेंस भी हुआ, आगे और भी उन्होंने
See, what
बोला कि
happened
हाँ
was
जाइए,
that
क्योंकि ऐसा तो नहीं
yeah,
हो सकता कि सब
yeah,
कुछ अच्छा ही अच्छा हुआ होगा.
correct. So I will of course narrate you the incident. But before that, I'll tell you something very interesting, and that will be, kind of a precursor to the example which you are inquiring about. When I was setting up this project, so I had gone for some utility purchases. So I went to a wholesaler, and thereafter, this wholesaler was not, he had a minimum bar that I will not supply below this number. So he said, no, I will not be able to supply to you because I generally supply on a very high scale. But of course, then the for being a Fauji, ex-Fauji helped, and he said, sir, aapke liye I can give you a concession, and I'm giving it to you only. So then he gave me one, mantra, you can say it, or he gave me one particular statement. He said, sir, आप जिस business में जा रहे हो, उस बिजनेस में 15 से 20% लोग ऐसे आएंगे जो सिर्फ आपकी कमी निकालने के लिए ही आएंगे. उनको इस बात से कोई मतलब नहीं होगा कि आप कितनी अच्छी सर्विस दे रहे हो, कितनी अच्छी डील कर रहे हो, आपका जो है स्टैंडर्ड कितना हाई है. उनका पर्पज ये होगा कि वो 15 से 20% कस्टमर ऐसे होंगे, उनका पर्पज ये होगा कि वो आपके अंदर गलती निकालेंगे ही निकालेंगे. एंड बिलीव मी, आई after experiencing all this entire thing, I can watch that his statement was very correct. Indian tourist is yet to evolve in terms of a mature tourist. So you would always have some kind of challenges, and this industry, if somebody is not willing to accept very difficult situations and very hard challenges, one should not venture into it. It will test your perseverance levels and patience levels to the core. So I had many such incidents, and I can count, we can continue learning, but I'll quote you one wherein there was a particular family who came here, and they were from a political backgrounds. Of course, they were carrying that weight that we are from a political background, and moment they arrived into the facility, so they started placing their undue demands. They wanted particular set of staff to be placed out there outside their room, and a lot of chaos happened. So while all this was happening, so it went to the point, and mark my words, that the lady and the gentleman who were representing the family of around 10 people, they were instigating me to manhandle them. They instigated their best that once I manhandle them, then the entire story will change. I understood that what is the trick here. So I had to really restrict myself, control myself. I brought it down to the level where I could bring some sense into them, and thereafter we started interacting. It was so. These people were not even willing to listen. That I told them, look, I will give you good service, but don't place undue demands. I am from the armed forces background, so they were not even willing to believe that I am an ex-army officer. They said, no, we don't believe you, we don't trust you, and all that. Of course, thereafter, gradually what happened was that, when the discussion took place, and thereafter probably they browsed my name on the internet and they found that, yes, I'm an ex-army officer, and they spoke to certain other people they found. So then the entire thing started, reversing. So then the entire the way they were addressing me, पहले अरे अरे करके बात कर रहे थे, then they started addressing me as sir. Then they, of course, they saw that I was awarded sorry Chakra and all that. So then the gentleman and the lady, both, they apologized for how they behaved, and then they in fact gave me, before departure, they gave me some very positive suggestions on how to improve certain things in the dining hall, certain things in the rooms, and in fact, even after that, now I'm in touch with them. They are trying to help me out in certain other social aspects on the social programs which I do. So that was a story which was, something where things started so very bad, completely out of control. But then thereafter, eventually, it not only got under control, but it became very, very positive and very good.
तो सर, एक तो मुझे समझ आया कि इस इंडस्ट्री में बहुत सारे 15 से 20% कस्टमर जरूर ऐसे आएंगे जो सब कुछ सही होने के बाद भी कमियां निकालेंगे, कंप्लेंट करेंगे, और बहुत सब्र के साथ इसको डील करना पड़ेगा। मेरा आपसे आखिरी सवाल, आज का मेरा आखिरी सवाल, और फिर ऑडियंस ऑब्वियसली दे विल हैव देयर शेयर ऑफ क्वेश्चंस, वुड बी कि एक ऑफिसर अगर ये सोच रहा है कि वो हॉस्पिटैलिटी के अंदर अपने एंटरप्रेन्योरियल वेंचर को स्टार्ट करे, तो सब्र तो डेवलप करना ही पड़ेगा। अब देखिए, मेरे ऐसे तो पता नहीं कितना कर पाएंगे जाट टाइप लोग, बट इसके अलावा क्या और मेंटल शिफ्ट्स या ट्रेड्स हैं जो आप बोलेंगे कि सीखनी चाहिए, या किन मेंटल स्किल्स, किन चेंजेस पर काम करना चाहिए सो दैट वन इज एबल टू बी सक्सेसफुल इन हॉस्पिटैलिटी वेंचर?
See, the first and foremost requirement is that, if a soldier like me, I would term myself as a hardcore soldier. So for me, it is a complete 180 degrees of, reverse. Coming from that background, and now today being so courteous, so kind, and at times accepting a lot of nonsense as we discussed. So one thing is that you have to unlearn what you learned there, certain aspects and certain aspects. So you have to learn some level, and some amount of unlearning and learning, both are required. That is one aspect. Second thing is that, as traditionally people term that Fauji's are not so adaptable, they are not able to adapt to the situations in the civil street and all that. So adaptability is the second factor, which is very, very critical in this particular business, because you'll get whole kind of, people out there. Your market segment is segregated of various kinds of people from different walks of life, and different experiences, stature, and all that. Third thing is that the communication skill is always important in whatever we do in life. It is probably slightly more important in the hospital sector, because your one word and the way that word is conveyed can make huge difference. It could be a plus, it could be a minus, depending on how have you used that word, and in what way you have used that word. That's so the communication skill is utterly critically important when you come into the hospital sector. And that thing which I would
So एक तो
say
सर
that
जो
in terms
आपका
of
मैं समझा कि वन
your
हैज टू डेवलप, इनका एक तो सब्र जो आपने बोला कि आप इन स्पाइट ऑफ यू पर्सनली बीइंग अ वेरी एरो स्ट्रेट ऑफिसर, आपको बहुत अलग अलग तरह के लोगों से डील करना पड़ता है। सो adaptability and patience are the probably the two skills one will have to work very hard on अगर ये वाले फील्ड में सक्सेस करना है। मतलब अनलाइक फौज, थिंग्स आर नॉट वेरी स्ट्रक्चर्ड एंड डिफाइंड, आपको हर कोई भी आ सकता है।
you have to create your own structure, you have to your own communication style, you have to really train yourself, you have to train your team, because this is so unpredictable. You can have a guest who is so docile, so nice, so humble, and on the contrary, who you will have a guest whom you will find your worst enemy, even than the worse than the Pakis or the Chinese. So that is the kind of segment you deal with. That is the kind of variety you deal with.
Right, sir. So it's a very exciting journey. We wish you all the best from Values Network. You're already a part of our WhatsApp groups, and I mean, I've shared the link for Values Network WhatsApp travel group, वैल्यूज नेटवर्क गूगल ग्रुप सर वहाँ पर हैं. अगर आपको सर से और कोई संपर्क करना हो तो वहाँ भी कर सकते हैं. ही ऑल्सो कीप शेयरिंग हिज लेटेस्ट अपडेट्स फ्रॉम हिज प्रॉपर्टी देयर ऑन द ट्रैवल ग्रुप. नाउ आई विल स्टॉप द रिकॉर्डिंग.
Gotta focus on yourself, on your faith, on your dreams, on your mind, on your health, yeah.